You're going to showboat, knock down the shot.
For what his value is, he doesn't equate to winning basketball.
When you're talking about the greatest of greats, that's what you have to do. You have to nitpick.
We'll see you in the playoffs. We'll see you in the playoffs.
Welcome, everybody, to this edition of the Tee 'em Up podcast. I am Jace Eustace, joined as always by our resident Bulls fan, Jared Huff. Jared, rough week for the Bulls, but how you feeling?
I'm pissed. I am pissed as hell. And I'm not pissed at my team because we've been through the ringer with injuries. Derrick Jones Jr. has been out. Lonzo Ball's been out. Zach LaVine's been out. But hey, in all this darkness, there was a light. Alex Caruso returned from his foot sprain, only to be taken out midair by the dirtiest player in college basketball history.
Oh, man.
And no suspension. All he was ejected from the game. And you know, go ahead and say what you're going to say because I got plenty more I could say.
Yeah, I'm sure you do. I was just going to say we were going to lead off with that, let it get off your chest. But the last few weeks haven't really been great, to say the least, for the Chicago Bulls. You know, news came out over this last week. Two of the team's top guards, in Lonzo Ball and Alex Caruso, both suffered injuries that will take them out for a long period of time. Ball suffered a meniscus injury, will have to have right knee surgery, scheduled to be out for 6 to 8 weeks. And then Caruso fractured his right wrist after a scary play involving the Bucks' Grayson Allen, and will also be out 6 to 8 weeks. So, Jared, I'm just going to hand it off to you right away. How are you feeling? How are you feeling this morning?
I have also seen stuff Lonzo could be back as early as 4 to 6 weeks. Okay. So that makes me feel a little better. But let's just get back into my emotion.
All right. Let it out, man. Let it out.
Grayson Allen should be suspended for 6 to 8 weeks. It's ridiculous. He has a known history of this. There's a play earlier this season where you see Derrick Rose blowing right by him, and he sticks his foot out a little bit to trip the guy, who is another player with injury history. Could you imagine if Derrick Rose went down on his knees after a trip from Allen as he's driving full speed to the hoop? Would have been catastrophic potentially. This guy has no business playing in the NBA if this is how he's going to play. It's not the 1980s anymore. We want to see our players thrive. We want to see a league where the best players are out on the floor every night because they're healthy. Alex Caruso wasn't going to randomly fracture his wrist. He was taken out midair where the second hand came across to essentially like pull him around. Grayson Allen's a dangerous player. The NBA needs to do something about it. The Milwaukee Bucks need to do so. Oh, and on top of that, the Milwaukee Bucks posted on Twitter.
Oh, I knew you were going to
go to that tweet. Or a little GIF the next day of like, "Good morning, Kings versus Bucks," and it's Grayson Allen with the donut. Which then even the Chicago Bulls replied like, "Are you serious?" And they deleted the tweet. You know what? I've never had a reason to dislike the Milwaukee Bucks. Like, sure, they're a conference rival, but like for most of my life, the Bucks have been ass, just really bad. Until the last couple of years with Giannis, which is great for them. But you know what? Now, no. Bucks are enemy number one. We'll see you in the playoffs. See you in the playoffs.
See, when we started this podcast, and both of us being fans of the game of basketball, obviously, both of us kind of having some differentiating opinions on some things as far as, you know, the history of some of these players and the history of the NBA. This might be one of the ones that we have some sort of disagreement on. I reviewed the play on this. A lot. I just sat there and let it play 20, 30 times right in a row. I think this looked a lot worse than what the intention was. I think Grayson Allen was making a play for the basketball when he went up to try to make a play. He caught Caruso's arm coming down. I completely agree with that. And it did look as if he was obviously being pulled to the ground. Allen, I think his past definitely precedes him as a dirty player. Don't get me wrong. Obviously, the whole tripping incidents, multiple incidents in college, what he's done so far in the NBA, he definitely is. If you were making a list of the dirtiest players in the NBA, he would be at the top of the mind for most NBA fans. I think he's generally a very hated player, but I think Allen definitely deserved the ejection. Don't get me wrong. It was a very hard foul. And in the NBA, you don't play like that anymore. And the result obviously was about as bad as it possibly could have been. Obviously, there's a scenario where they both go up, they collide midair, someone gets pulled to the ground, and nothing ends up being this bad. I think it's heightened by the fact that it was a fractured wrist that Caruso is now going to have to go through and going to have to rehab from. But I've reviewed the video on this many times, and I don't think when Allen initially jumped to try to make a play that he was intending to harm Caruso. I believe he went up and tried to make a play for the ball. When they met each other, then it was kind of almost like he was trying to catch himself and was pulling down Caruso, and that's just how it looked. I get it. It looks awful. I get that. I just don't think his intention was to harm Caruso when he was running to the basket.
I have to disagree. I don't think he intended to injure Caruso so much, but he definitely intended to rattle him. I mean, that is not a basketball play, bringing the second hand up and pulling. That's not a basketball move, in my opinion. So I kind of understand what you're saying, but at the same time, I gotta disagree.
I understand. No, that's completely fair. And it's completely fair. And it's one of those incidents where it is just very unfortunate. No one wants to see injuries, especially a team that's already been dealing with injuries, sitting there at the top of the East. You know, they've kind of dropped. I mean, recently now they've dropped a half game just below Brooklyn into the second spot. But I just don't think Allen was intending to harm Caruso. I get it. The objection, I completely understand. After a play like that, an objection has to happen. I'd even be okay with a short suspension. I don't think a suspension for 4 to 6 weeks, like you said, would be fair.
That's the emotion.
Yes, I completely understand. Trust me. And if this happened to like a Jimmy Butler or something like that, I might be feeling the exact same way. I completely understand how that works. It looks really bad, but I just don't think the intention was as bad as the way that it resulted.
There was a little karmic justice that was done last night, though, in light of this.
Okay.
I mean, different sport, mind you, but some of the same players. So, Chicago first. Well, I guess let's say Wisconsin in this case. Well, last night, the all-time Bears leading scorer, Robbie Gould of the 49ers, sent the Packers and Aaron Rodgers likely out of Lambeau Field. You know what? Karma. But that's not it. The Bulls got to get their karma too. So we're coming for you, Milwaukee. We're coming for you.
Yeah, I did want to write down one thing as far as I'm going to try to make a silver lining out of these injuries for your Bulls moving forward. Chicago's done a great job of positioning themselves very well. You know, they've positioned themselves where they can suffer some injuries to some key guys, and they can still not just completely obviously fall out of the playoff race, being there at the top when all this kind of went down. They've done a great job so far. I think it's fair to expect them to drop in the standings a little bit, but you hope that these young guys on this roster can really kind of take that next man up mentality.
Hey, look at Io and Kobe.
That's what I'm saying. These young guys, it's especially the young guards. The young guards on this roster are going to get a chance to play some big minutes, and you hope to see the growth in them. And we've talked about it so far this season with Miami, and one of their biggest strengths is when the starters went down, we saw these young guys come in and come out of nowhere and keep the team afloat. If I'm saying a silver lining for Chicago is that these young guys are going to get a chance to play. They're going to get a chance to play big minutes. They're going to get chances to close games. And if I'm the coaching staff for the Bulls, I'd be trying to change this around and looking at this as an opportunity to grow your depth rather than coming in with the mindset of, hey, we just got to survive till these guys get back.
Yeah. And this might be a little controversial. But aside from Evan Mobley, who was drafted third by the Cavs, which was a steal in my opinion.
Yeah.
I think Io DeSumo is the best value pick of the draft, considering
you
where
can
he
argue
was drafted.
That. Oh yeah.
This guy's a lottery talent, in my opinion.
Oh yeah.
Late lottery for sure.
Well, he looked great last year at University of Illinois when they were making their run as far as they were. Came in as a 1 seed into the March Madness tournament. So definitely he was the leader of that team, him and Coburn down there. So definitely be interesting to see what happens with the Bulls. I know obviously I didn't look up when the next time they play Milwaukee, but might be some heightened security during that game.
We got 3 more matchups.
Yeah.
3 more.
Oh yeah. There'll be a few more.
And it's Jan. So there's going to be a lot very soon.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see. And I don't know, man, just you hate to see injuries. You really do. And it just sucks that it's happening, obviously, to your team. And it just sucks to happen to some of these top players on some of these top teams, because everybody wants to go up against each other's best. I know all these players do. And, hopefully it doesn't snowball from here. But moving on from a couple injuries to a couple, I guess, a great thing that happened for Steph Curry on Friday. He did something unsurprisingly that he hasn't done so far in his great career. And he hit a game-winning buzzer beater to take down the Houston Rockets. And I get it. He needed the game-winning buzzer beater to take down the Houston Rockets, but we're just going to forget about that for right now. But Jarrett, were you surprised to hear that this was his first game-winning buzzer beater? And what does this mean for his legacy, man?
It is surprising, because you just think of like all the incredible 3-pointers that Curry's made. You just see the highlights on YouTube, Instagram, wherever. You figure one of those was to be a game winner, right?
Mm.
And that's just not the case until tonight, which I got to say, whoever had that photo from the baseline where you see the shot clock
Yeah,
in the background and Curry right there, that's an all-timer right there.
that's
And
great.
that's up there, I think, with the Wade and LeBron alley
Yeah,
oop
yeah, that actually wasn't an
at
alley
least
oop.
center, or like off the
Yeah,
backboard.
everybody always thinks that was an alley oop, but it actually wasn't.
I kind of consider off the glass
Yeah, is
backboard
one of
still an
those.
alley oop. That's whatever. Anyway, um, I don't think it has a negative impact on Curry's legacy that he hasn't been hitting these shots, because if you look at his track record, he's been a winning player for majority of his career, to where I think he's just hit so many big shots that in these close game situations, he's put his team up enough to where he doesn't need to hit the shot for the game. So I don't penalize him at all. I mean, we know what kind of shooter he is. We know if he needs to make these shots, he can make them. And tonight was just that first example. It's weird that's happening this late into his career, but Steph Curry's a great player regardless. And I don't think his lack of game winners hurts him in any way.
Yeah. This I'm gonna disagree with you just a little bit, not much here, but this was nice for Curry. It's really kind of had a rough go of it, especially recently, even though the Warriors have really been able to win beside his little kind of shooting slump he's been on. But I was really surprised to hear that this was his first game-winning buzzer beater, because he's pretty much done everything else in his career related to shooting at such a high level, and no one can argue that. It's hard to hit game-winning buzzer beaters, and there's a long list of guys that have hit multiple game winners, but it's really hard to do it at the buzzer and to just kind of have those sort of iconic moments that we talk about forever. And from my research, what I kind of looked up, it looks like, and I could be wrong on some of these numbers because some of these players are still kind of playing, but so Michael Jordan leads NBA history with 9 game-winning buzzer beaters. I have LeBron James, Kobe Bryant, and Joe Johnson are all tied in second with 8. ISO Joe up there with 8 with Kobe and LeBron. It's nice to see. And then Paul Pierce has 7 to kind of round out that top 5. I think this is a little missing piece for Curry when we're kind of talking about, 10 years from now when all these players their careers are done and we start to do what we always do is we try to, where do they rank with these guys and the guys from the 80s and the guy from the 90s, and we'll do that, to the day that we die. I think it's a little missing piece, especially for a guy whose claim to fame is his shooting. We talk about, being clutch is kind of one of those intangibles that leads these players in kind of in the status of their greatest of all times and where do they ranks. And I think that when you start to just down the road, you start to nitpick Curry, because that's what we're going to do. Because when you're talking about the greatest of greats, that's what you have to do. You have to nitpick these little guys because all of them are great in their own right. Unless he adds a few more of these in his career, which he very possibly could. I mean, for all we know, he could hit 2 in the next week. He's just that type of player. But this could be one of those things that could kind of ding him in those conversations moving forward, I think.
All right, I would say that's a fair argument, because we always debate like who's more of a clutch shooter, who do you want with the final shot, and like you always throw like Jordan, LeBron, and Kobe, just because like those
no one throws LeBron in there. Oh, the big thing about LeBron is he's not clutch, which never made sense to
me. He erased that the last couple seasons. Okay, I used to say that probably like early to mid 2010s, but no, the last couple like playoff, you can't knock him anymore. I've seen him hit shots against the Bulls. I've seen him hit shots against really any team he's going against in the playoffs. LeBron, and I am a LeBron James sports hater in terms of I like to root against him because like he's been a conference rival for most of my life. Not that I hate him because he's great, although I hate him being great against my team. Of course. But I will say, stop fooling yourself into the argument that LeBron James isn't clutch. He's clutch. Can we put that to bed?
Thank you. We appreciate that over on this side, because that's the number one most ludicrous thing when people try to discredit is LeBron's not clutch. Well, I mean, he's second in game-winning buzzer beaters.
I think he'll probably tire past MJ.
Probably. I mean, he'll have the opportunity to. And you could argue there's been some games even this year where it's almost like he knows he's one behind Jordan. So like there's some threes that he pulls up for when the game is tied that even I'm like, come on, man, just drive to the bucket, go get it. But
one thing. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
One thing I have to say about opposing defenses, when he starts looking at the ground like that at the arc, move up on him. He's gonna
shoot. He looks you up and down.
Biggest tell ever. So please put a hand up.
No, I agree. I agree, man. Let's move on here to LeBron's team, and that is the Los Angeles Lakers. So it seems like we don't really go a week without mentioning the Los Angeles Lakers, and this week is going to be no
So
different.
fun.
It is fun, man. But this week, the news out of the Lakers camp, besides from LeBron's current streak of scoring over 25 points, we're not going to talk about that, is definitely Russell Westbrook. Was benched in the fourth quarter of the Lakers game against the Pacers. The Lakers dropped a game that they definitely should have grabbed. After the game, Coach Vogel was asked about the benching and said that he was playing the guys he thought were going to win the game. So, Jarrett, does this mean that Westbrook's days in Los Angeles are numbered?
I don't necessarily think it does. I mean, if he was playing on like a $20 million contract, sure. But that man's owed like what, 45 million this year?
Yeah, I wrote it down. He's making 44 this year and he's under contract for 47 next year.
How do you move that? I mean, everyone's seen the tape. Everyone's seen where he's gone everywhere since Oklahoma City. Who wants him? Westbrook, don't get me wrong, is still a very talented player. Just he doesn't for what his value is, he doesn't equate to winning basketball. And that's been more evident this year than any other year. And it's pretty telling when your coach says that I put the players in the game that I think could win the game. Well, why is your $44 million a year player not one of those players?
Yeah.
And that's pretty telling. Now, this whole Lakers situation, in my opinion, is a pressure cooker waiting to explode. Whether it's LeBron just having a passive-aggressive, frustrated interview, throwing all his teammates that, in some cases, he's justified under the bus. Whether it's, I could see a crazy scenario where Westbrook just walks away from the team, or where the team tries to trade him, or they agree to a buyout. Frank Vogel could get fired any day now because apparently he's on a game-to-game basis. Like, this is not good. This team is back and forth under and over 500. And it's the West at the top. It's not going to be easy this year. Now, they could be lucky, get a fifth seed and run into somebody like Dallas where they might have a chance. But if they play one of these top teams like the Jazz, Warriors, or Suns in early first rounds, it's going to be another first round exit. Yeah. We should see what happens when AD comes back. But this whole Westbrook situation, it's not help. I mean, he's hitting every day. I feel like I see a shot of him hitting the top of the backboard.
Yeah, he's showing up like, on Shaqtin' in the Fool a lot.
Bad.
Yeah. And you mentioned AD possibly. He is a game time decision. We're recording this here on Sunday. He's a game time decision for their game today against Miami. So we'll see if he's possibly back. I would imagine he probably wouldn't be back though tonight, but it is nice to see that he's possibly getting closer here to returning. But, you know, before the season, I was on record that if anybody was going to make things work with Russell Westbrook, it was going to have to be LeBron. I knew it. And at this point, I'm really starting to believe that not even LeBron can make Russell Westbrook a winning basketball player right now. You know, Russell hasn't looked comfortable this entire season. He's had so many embarrassing Shaqtin' in a Fool moments. He's a constant turnover machine. He's not a shooting threat, and he's really struggled down the stretch and to close out basketball games. And he's one of those players who is so talented, and obviously his career numbers and resume are up there with some of the best in the league. But at this point in his career, he just looks like he's dragging the Lakers down, and he's not actually helping them get to that goal of winning games against the Indiana Pacers. You got to win those games, man. I get it. Karis LeVert went dummy in the fourth quarter and couldn't be guarded by anybody. And congratulations to him. But you have to win those basketball games against the bottom of the Eastern Conference. Those are easy wins you have to pick up. I think the Lakers front office hope that his days as a Laker are numbered, but at this point, where can you send him and what can you get for him? And we touched on this year, $44 million. He's under contract for $47 million next year. I don't see a fit. You know, if you're a young team that can afford the contract, you probably don't want him around taking minutes from younger players. If you're a contending team, you don't want to add his star power to your roster that's already been playing well together. If I'm the Lakers and I can get an offer for Jeremy Grant and maybe Kelly Olynyk or Corey Joseph from the Pistons, that might be the very best that I can possibly get if the Pistons are willing to take that contract. I'm probably taking that offer in a heartbeat, and I don't even think Detroit's front office would be dumb enough to.
Oh, no way Detroit would do that. For some reason, they really value Jeremy Grant, where like I've heard some offers from him to where like I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, I would take that, and they're just not budging. Yeah. Also, Jeremy Grant wants to go somewhere where he's a primary offensive
Mhm.
option. And I'm like, good luck finding a team that
Yeah.
wants to win. That
That
wants,
that can match the price tag that the Detroit Pistons are
yeah.
putting on it.
But yeah, I try to go through every team, and I'm like, Westbrook doesn't have a fit in the league because the teams that would kind of make sense, they have young guards where he'd just be
Mhm.
taking time away from them and essentially the ball, and it just wouldn't make sense for those players' development. Like you could say, oh, throw him back in OKC. No, a lot of young guards
Yeah.
takes the ball away from Giddy, takes it away from Shy. Um, Pistons again takes away from Cade Cunningham and the reclamation project that is I can't even think of his name right now, but you know who I'm talking about. Their first round pick last year, Killian Hayes. There we go.
Yeah, yeah, Hayes.
So yeah, it's just I don't see a spot for him in the league, and it's kind of sad.
Yeah, and he hasn't really branded himself as this mentor type guard that almost like guys like Rajon Rondo have kind of like taken like, hey, I'm not a star anymore. I can still help out a team. I can come off the bench. And some people are calling for Russell Westbrook to come off the bench. I don't even think that would solve anything. And there is not a chance Westbrook is going to be a six man. That's just not going to happen. He doesn't have that in him, I don't think. But it's just right now it's a sticky situation. It keeps getting worse, man. It seems like week by week we're kind of waiting. They'll have a game where they look fantastic. They look like they finally got rotations down. Yeah, Malik Monk will have a good game. THT will have a good game. Carmelo Anthony will be knocking down threes. And all of a sudden you look at what this team, hey, maybe they could be in there in that six. Right now I think they are technically the seventh seed. But obviously they want to climb as high as possible, stay out of that play-in tournament. But I don't know, man. With each passing week, the struggles have continued to go. LeBron has played fantastic. His individual numbers, you don't know how long that's going to continue to keep up. Anthony Davis scheduled to be back, but even when he was playing this season, wasn't exactly great. Wasn't helping the team. He was supposed to be the number one option with LeBron, kind of that number two role. It's what they were hoping. And right now, it looks worse and worse with almost every single game that passes by. Today they're going to play Miami, and I think Miami will destroy them. Not because I'm a Miami fan. I just think Miami's deeper. I think they have better players. I think LeBron is probably still the best player on both teams. But if you look at Miami, probably has 2, 3, 4, and 5. If you're talking about the best players that are going to play in this game tonight, which is Sunday, but it's interesting to see. I don't know if Russell Westbrook will finish the season as a Laker, but like we just said, man, I don't know who's going to take him on. So
Exactly.
be a rough one. But now jumping from the middle of the West to the top of the West, the Phoenix Suns now have quietly gotten a 3.5 game lead over the rest of the West, including the Warriors. So simple question for you on this one, Jared. Are we undervaluing how good the Phoenix Suns are?
They don't really get the press that you would expect because they don't really have one of like your perennial superstars, unless you can argue Chris Paul. But Chris Paul's never since he was in Los Angeles been celebrated like the cream of the crop.
Just the point
Even though his effect on the team obviously is the effect of what a superstar like LeBron or Jokic or Joel Embiid or Steph Curry or Giannis Antetokounmpo has on an individual franchise. It's just because Chris Paul doesn't have the numbers. He doesn't put up 28 points a night. He doesn't grab like 20, 15 rebounds and 10 assists in the same night. Like he's just not one of those guys that's going to do that. He's just going to affect the game in different ways through his leadership, through getting other players involved. I personally have not undervalued this team. I believe I had him as the first seed.
Yeah, I think you did.
I think I had him as my first seed preseason. And the Warriors have definitely helped him out in terms of separating from the West just with their struggles lately. But in my opinion, the Suns are undervalued by everyone but myself.
Man, I might have undervalued them a little bit coming into the season, but I've been really impressed with them recently. They're 9-1 in their last 10. They've started to really grow a nice sizable lead over the Golden State Warriors. So if they do go into a week or 2 week slump or an injury here or there, they position themselves that they can survive and hang on to that top seed. When you start to dig into the numbers, for me, what really impresses me about this team is that on any given night, you don't know who their leading scorer is going to be. It could be a Chris Paul, it could be Devin Booker, Mikal Bridges, or even I wrote down the underrated and very impressive play of JaVale McGee and Bismack Biyombo. All of a sudden, these two guys are looking like absolute studs. And both of the Suns' big men have had great seasons. You pair that with Paul who could drop 20 points and 20 assists on any given night, just him being point god status, Booker could explode for 50 points. Jay Crowder could get hot from behind the 3-point line. We've seen what he can do. This team is scary, man. It really is. They're a deep team coming off that finals loss. They look hungry. They look to be positioning themselves and putting them in a place where they can make another finals run this year. But like the way that I kind of put it into perspective is there any other team in the league right now where it's harder to guess on any given night who their leading scorer is going to be?
And I think that kind of I would agree with that, and I think that's kind of like the point I was making. They don't have a super standout guy. Like obviously Devin Booker and Chris Paul are the top guys, where you'd kind of expect Booker to stand out every night, but that's not always the case, and that's what's great.
He scored
about
11 in their last game.
Yeah, and which not
won.
Great, but
Mikal Bridges had 25. Chris Paul I think had 18, and then I think it was like 16 and 18 for Biyombo and McGee.
And
it's crazy.
I'm really glad you brought up the McGee and especially the Biyombo piece of this, because like on DeAndre Ayton's missed time and those two have stepped up. Biyombo was a very underrated pickup for them midseason during all the COVID craziness. Biyombo, in fairness, hasn't really done anything since that 2016 playoff run for the Toronto Raptors, where he had some big moments.
Yeah.
But this guy, he's gonna help this team in the playoffs. He's I believe a 6'8", 6'9" center, so you can run him in a small ball lineup. He's gonna play defense and he's gonna get you boards, maybe some offensive rebounds. I love the fit, especially when they are missing man, I can't even think of his name right now.
DeAndre Ayton.
No, their center from 70 played the 76ers, Minnesota. I keep wanting to say Darko, but no, that's not right. He tore his ACL in the finals last year.
Saric. Dario
Saric. Yep. I was like, why do I want to say Darko? Dario. There we go.
Adding them.
Yeah,
no, definitely. I was gonna say Biyombo is kind of like almost like his play reminds me of almost like a poor man's Bam Adebayo. It's kind of what he gives. He's a shorter center. He's got good size, good speed. He's a worse passer, but everything else, he's good on the boards, and he's done a great job for them in those absence of those players. And I don't even know, is Sarge scheduled to come back this year? Do you know?
If he does, it's going to be really late. Like because the season was a later season last year. Yeah. Like it was already into July when he tore his ACL. So who knows? Honestly, if anything, I wouldn't expect him back before the playoffs.
Definitely, yeah. We'll definitely be keeping an eye at the Suns as they continue to climb and get that lead in the Western Conference, which you want to hold on to that one seed at all possible. You might get an easy matchup against the Lakers, but we'll see how things shake out. And we wanted to, our last segment here a little bit before we get to tee them up, obviously, is I wanted to talk a little bit about Dallas. And they've kind of flown underneath the radar for the most of the season. Got off to a really underwhelming start. Luka didn't look to really be in shape. Team couldn't really find his footing. But since then, they've slowly improved their play. They find themselves slowly climbing in that Western Conference. They're currently 26-20 and at 5th place in the West. So, Jarrett, what do you think the ceiling is for this Mavericks team?
Despite their great play as of late, I don't think their ceiling is that high. It's not a very deep roster. They're a couple of pieces away from being a true contender in the Western Conference. Like, sure, they have the superstar in Luka Doncic, but the rest of their pieces, like other than I would say Jalen Brunson, no one's really consistent. Tim Hardaway Jr. has his moments. KP, I feel like it's a game-to-game basis whether you're going to get the New York Knicks all-star version or whether you're going to get the guy that's been in trade talks ever since he arrived in Dallas, it feels like. Yeah. I don't know what moves you can make because obviously if their best bet's the buyout market, because I don't think they can bring in anything of value with anything they give up to like make any massive changes. Which is kind of unfortunate. For some reason, Dallas, and we saw this in Dirk's time in Dallas has never been a big free agency destination. And it's kind of sad, like to see if Luka Doncic's early years are wasted just because they can't draw anybody into the franchise. As we've seen this year, it's been, especially when Luka's not at his best, Dallas really can't do much. So that's just my opinion. I don't think their ceiling's too high, but it's just great to see at least the team playing better lately. Yeah,
I don't know where I'd place their ceiling. I could see them being a second round team. I could see them getting past their first round matchup. And I'll tell you what, man, I wouldn't want to play this team if they stay on this trajectory when it comes to the playoffs. We know what Luka's capable of, especially when he gets to the postseason. You can just go ask the Los Angeles Clippers about that. They've had plenty of trouble with Luka when it comes to the playoffs. Luka has really played himself back into shape, and you'd love to get to the point where he's kind of mature enough. He knows that he's got to come into the season in shape, because you can't do this every year where you come in, it doesn't look like you really worked out at all in the offseason, and it's going to take you a month to 2 months to really play yourself into shape. That's not a good situation where you want to be. But now we're at the point where dude is in shape and he's dropping 40 points a night. Like, that's just the type of player that he is. To me, this is tough. I would love to see the Mavericks be really active, try to improve before the trade deadline. I think Luka is a bona fide superstar, and I think Kristaps would be a good number 3. I don't think Kristaps has ever been a number 2. I think he needs to be a number 3 on a roster. I want to see this team go big game hunting at all possible. I know they don't really have the assets. They're going to have to kind of mortgage their future, if at all possible, try to get in there, try to get in the market of some of these guys that have been rumored to be traded, to go find that number 2 scoring option to help Luka as we get deeper and deeper into the season. You know, go try to get Karis LeVert, go try to get Domantas Sabonis, go try to get, I wrote down Jaylen Brown. Go try to get Jaylen Brown. Good luck with that one, because we know the Celtics don't trade anything. Go get Brandon Ingram. Free him from the New Orleans Pelicans. Go get someone that can come in and help this team when Luka doesn't score 40 points a night. Someone who can help them out down the stretch in big games and help push this team over the hump, because that's the only way they're going to kind of raise the bar, especially in the Western Conference.
Free everyone from the New Orleans Pelicans.
Oh man, I want to. You're not wrong. You're sadly not wrong. And from, what was it, 2 to 3 years ago, when we're like, oh, this team has one of the brightest futures in the NBA. They're going to be one of these teams. And where are they now? Like, Brandon's balling. It doesn't matter.
Just send Zion to New York. We know he's probably going to end up there at some point anyway.
Yeah, him and Julius Randle, and oh boy.
Swap Julius. You don't need Julius Randle Zion there. Just get the Duke Big 3 going. That'd be. I don't think.
You go.
I don't think we've ever seen in the NBA, like, I mean, because we have some trifectas or some 4s and 5s in terms of squads of notable players that played in college. I don't think we've seen more than 2 players, prolific players, play together from their college days. Like Hakeem and Clyde Drexler are the only one that comes to mind, because when they both played at Houston and then played in Houston. But yeah, I can't think of anything else.
Yeah. Well, I mean, right now we got, like, oh no, they didn't play together. My bad. Never mind. Anyways, moving on here to our final and our favorite segment on the Tee 'em Up podcast, and that's Tee 'em Up. So Jarrett, who's getting your technical foul this week?
I mean, I already kind of talked about it. I didn't realize how much I would talk about it, but I have to tee up. I have to tee up the NBA.
Okay.
Now I know the 68-week suspension was a little outrageous on my part, but I'm a passionate guy. I stick up for my boy Caruso. Come on, he's one of my favorite players. I have to. But you have to suspend Grayson Allen. Here's a history. Like, whether it's 1 game or 2, the NBA just has to make a statement. Something has to be done, or else players are going to continue to be at risk playing this guy. Because this guy, he's been suspended in college. He's been thrown out of games in college. You've seen it as early as the NBA Summer League, his rookie year. Nothing's been done. Nothing's changed. He's going to be the same guy until something really wakes his ass up to realize, oh, I probably shouldn't be doing this anymore. And so far, the NBA has done nothing as far as I've heard. So I have to tee up the NBA on that one.
Yeah, I get it. I completely understand it. I understand the frustration. But this week, I'm going to take a little bit different approach. I'm going to tee up Sacramento Kings guard Terrence Davis. And I know most of you probably didn't see this game because it was between the Kings and the Rockets. So why would anybody watch this game? But
I didn't watch this game.
But it was a good one. Davis's teammate drove to the lane, kicked the ball out to the top of the arc, where Davis was as open as you're ever going to get on a basketball court for a 3-pointer. Davis paused for what seemed like 10 seconds, gave a very noticeable shoulder shimmy.
Oh, no.
Before rising and front rimming a 3 right out to be rebounded by Houston. And we've seen, and we talked a little bit a couple of weeks ago on the Tee 'em Up podcast, Alvin Gentry, he was pissed, man. Oh, my. Threw his clipboard on the bench. He looked just completely done as we've already seen so far with the Kings organization.
This poor man.
He looked awful. It was a ridiculous thing. If you're going to showboat like that, if you're going to give that shoulder shimmy, you're going to pause and hesitate for that defender to even take 2 steps forward to you. You have to knock down that 3. But, man, technical foul for me on Terrence Davis. If you're going to showboat, knock down the shot. That's all I have to say on that.
Can we just give a moment of silence for Alvin Gentry's NBA career thus far? He was at the highest of highs.
Yeah.
In 2015 with the Warriors. I still remember seeing the video where he was just with Steve Kerr and the champagne's everywhere, and he's yelling at AD because he was already hired as the Pelicans head coach by this point. He's like, we're coming here next year. We'll be here. And then the Pelicans didn't work out. And I think he was still there during Zion's rookie season where Zion was out half the year. So he didn't even get a full Zion, kicked out of town, and somehow unfortunately found his way onto the Sacramento Kings.
Yeah.
Luke Walton gets fired, and now it's his problem. I feel bad for the guy because he seems like a really nice guy. He's probably a good coach. Yeah. I mean,
no, we talked a little bit earlier. Free some of these guys from some of these teams,
man.
Free Alvin Gentry, man. He is much happier being the first assistant on some contending team. Let's give him a shot, dude. I'd
rather be the ball boy on a contending team.
I'm sure at this point, equipment manager for Milwaukee or Chicago or Golden State looking pretty good right now. I'm sure he'd take it. That's all we have this week for the Team Up podcast. I want to thank you guys all for joining us. Be sure to follow us along on all of our social media platforms for some more fun NBA content throughout the week. So that's all we have, guys. Thanks for watching, and catch you guys later.
Make sure to share us with your family and friends.